Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good dinner. I don't know any other time of days. It's hit play. We're here. This is a big one. It's Dune.
Dune.
Fear is the mind killer.
Is that why you looked at that quote right beforehand?
Yeah. I had to make sure I got the quote right before we jumped on camera real quick. Dune, it's here. The Frank Herbert novel is finally readapted.
Readapted.
It's like 1.5.
Yeah.
It's like 1.5 adaptation. Because there's the David Lynch, and then there's the
Horderowski that never got made.
And then
now we are here.
Now we're here with Denis Villeneuve.
We're back.
We just went to go watch it. This is probably 30 minutes.
This is the fastest turnaround time we've ever had.
So, yeah, we are. This is a fresh, hot out the oven, baking hot,
right off the dome.
You're gonna burn the roof of your mouth. Take. Let's do a spoiler free for the first
review.
Couple minutes, and then maybe we'll get into spoilers later.
All right.
Though I don't think we'll need to, because there's really not that much to talk about as far as spoilers.
True.
Regardless, spoiler free. Your opening remarks.
My opening remarks. I would say I would play it on the safe side and say that if you've read the book, then by all means go and see it. If you haven't read the book, though, I don't know if I would recommend it.
Interesting.
I would say that there's plenty in the movie. Okay, well, we should say that, and we've said this before on the podcast, but since we're talking about it now, part of the reason why Dune is considered unadaptable is because so much of the story is internal monologue.
Yes.
That it's hard to visualize that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that I had tried to predict that they were going to use voiceover in the movie, and that was going to be how they handled that, which they didn't do.
No,
so we were saved by that. Whether that would have been the better choice to do so that more information could have gotten across better is probably up to the individual viewer. And as far as I can tell, I would say that if you haven't read the book, I would be worried you would be bored.
Yes, I can agree with that. To me, this was in a similar vein of... I was getting a lot of Lord of the Rings vibe to this. Maybe not to the panache that the Lord of the Rings had.
The scale.
But as far as... as far as like the scale, the epicness of it, the heavy use of like mysticism in its storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
It was getting a lot of Lord of the Rings vibes with this. Where I think Lord of the Rings does better than Dune as far as adaptations go is just the characters.
Yeah.
I think the characters in Lord of the Rings are so much more fleshed out. And this is me giving that opinion, just not even having read the Lord of the Rings books, but just going off of the movies, I think they just work better on the screen.
Yeah.
And I don't think these characters, well, some do really, really well. And I actually think that some characters in the movie are better than their ones in the book.
Interesting.
Spoiler alert, Paul Atreides is not one of those characters. We'll get into him in like 5 minutes.
Whether or not he's even interesting in the book is probably still up for debate too.
Yeah. But to me, that's where I got a lot of, it just felt like an epic to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like it felt like an epic. Like I was watching, like I remember I said that the opening, when we were talking about like Game of Thrones, where Game of Thrones is kind of like an epic poem.
Mm-hmm.
This feels very similar to that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I felt that way at face value in a vacuum watching the movie, or if it's because I have knowledge of the book.
So you would say if you didn't read the book and you went into this movie, focus more on the spectacle
than
on the characters?
Yes. That would be my take on it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that if you try and like pick the nitty gritty of the world,
There's not much for you to even grasp on there.
I don't think you can actually. I just don't think, because by the time you try and figure out like, oh, what is this, and you're piecing together like this species is connected to this species and this and that and this and
They
that.
just
and
keep.
it's just
They
like,
just go on. Yeah.
like
They don't stop to
how
explain
are
anything.
different houses
Yeah.
connected to one another, and why are they beefing and all this other stuff. By the time you can actually figure it out, we're already at 6 scenes forward.
And that's from the book. It's not even explained in the book if you read it.
Yeah. In the book, you at least get like 6 pages before the next big scene happens. Whereas so you can like actually pause the book and be like, oh, okay, well, let me look it up real quick, see how everything's connected.
It's one of those. The book, quick review for the book. It's one of those sci-fi books where they will throw imaginary words at you, but they won't tell you what they mean.
Like a thropter. I didn't even know what the hell a thropter was.
Yeah, I couldn't even visualize. I was like, what is this supposed to even look like?
I kept seeing wings flapping, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, so what else does it look like?
Blades on a helicopter? Is that what this is? Yeah. The book is like that, and some people like that, some people don't. But at least they stuck to that in the movie.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because the movie ends where you left off in the book. Very conveniently.
Very conveniently, actually.
That was. Were you nervous for any spoilers?
That's why I was so surprised when the movie ended, and I turned to you and I was like, "Is that really where they're gonna end the movie? Like, you're gonna end there?" Because in the book, it doesn't feel like an ending at all.
No, that ending is not even. It's like halfway through part 2, right?
Yeah, it's like 400 pages into an 800 page
I'm pretty
book.
sure where they end the movie is just in the middle of a paragraph. Yeah.
It is currently page 502.
502 of a 700-page novel.
That's where the movie ends.
Yeah.
What was your question?
Let me ask you this. How faithful of an adaptation do you think this is? Let's just start there.
Very. Surprisingly, very faithful.
Yeah. They do a little bit of liberty in the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Like I remember reading and this is years ago. It took me so long. I don't even remember the first 250 pages very well, but I remember the first couple hundred pages. It was like, come on, can we get to where we're needing to go? And a lot of scenes that take place in the book don't necessarily take place in the movie, and there's a lot of movie scenes that aren't in the book. Like there's certain characters interacting with one another that aren't in the book. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, so Denis just kind of taking the world of Dune and the somewhat plot of Dune and just kind of doing his own thing to it.
Yeah.
But then it became
I thought at first, but then it became
very, very
much,
textbook adaptation.
Like the first 10 or so minutes of the movie isn't even in the book.
Yeah.
The whole thing where they like do the
dream sequence.
You now own the planet or something like that. Like that whole thing, the ceremony.
And cutaways to different planets and different yeah.
So I'd say it was pretty faithful, I would say.
Did you like that?
Yeah. I at least to the degree that like I don't really care to nitpick, where it's like, especially since I've only like as I've been going through the book, I still remember certain lines and when they were said. And so there were times where, he says something like, we need desert power. Like that specific line doesn't come until maybe like 300 pages in the book. But in the movie, he says it like right at the beginning. Yeah. And I'm just like, I don't want to nitpick, but it's not said there. But
that's how I felt too. It was kind of like the Harry Potter, like, they didn't do that during Christmas holidays.
I would just at least say there were no changes made that were glaringly offensive to the original book.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think if you're trying to make the quote-unquote unadaptable book or movie, I guess, book or whatever, the unadaptable piece of work, you kind of have to play it safe.
Yeah.
And I personally think Denis did a good job of just being like, here's the world of Dune, and here's what happens. And I'm not going to do a spin on. I'm gonna do my spin. I'm gonna make it.
Yeah.
Hans Zimmer's doing the score.
Oh yeah, he is.
Cool shots that Denis Villeneuve. There's editing techniques that he's known for in every single one of his movies.
Are you talking about the secret hidden eighth gate editing technique that got sprung up on us? We should preface this by saying the movie going experience we had wasn't very pleasant.
Yeah, we it kept skip framing and replaying frames and
audio jumps.
There was audio skips and it was bad. I'm surprised nobody in the theater actually went to go complain.
No, they did.
They did?
They did. That's who I was talking to outside the theater. I think she was like a manager for the place. She was talking to some guy and I just walked up and I was like, yeah, it kind of sucked. And she was like, here you go. You refund your tickets.
Right. I was wondering why you were talking to her.
I also the reason I left is because I was having I started choking halfway through the film and I had to leave to go and cough.
Oh,
I left the theater and I was in the parking lot having like a coughing fit.
James was just casually dying in the middle of
seriously. It was like I had like the tickle in the back of my throat. And I was like, I can fight this. I can hold it in. And I was like, I kept waiting for music to be like,
and then it wouldn't.
Yeah, and then I just had to leave. So, but I mean, I didn't miss anything, or did I?
Not really.
No. So that would be my review of the movie. More or less. Spoiler free, at least.
Yeah, I don't really think I have much more to say. I mean, I have much to say about characters, but I don't really want to spoil things.
Okay, for quickie spoiler review, how'd you feel about the acting? Spoiler free review. How do you feel about the acting?
Spoiler free?
Spoiler free. How do you feel about the acting?
Every character but Timothée Chalamet was pretty good. Which, if you've been a fan of the podcast since day one, you would know that I am not a big fan of Timothée Chalamet.
He went into
I was on record saying that I was not a fan of this casting decision. And I feel like I was proven right in some scenes. There were some scenes, I will admit, where I was like,
he was emotive.
This is pretty good.
Yeah.
And then there were some scenes where I was like, you still remind me of the boy from Lady Bird. You still remind me of the jerk off in Lady Bird.
Yeah, I'd say I would probably agree. Okay. If anybody is going to play Paul, he fits that like perfectly. The problem is that, like I said earlier, even in the book, Paul's not an interesting character.
Yeah.
He's pretty bland, personality-less. He just kind of is there to like complain.
I will say a smart thing that I think they did, and if I remember this correctly, from the novel to the book, is in the novel he's kind of a smart guy already.
Yeah.
Like he understands the world around him. Mm-hmm. Not to the degree that he does later in the novel, but he's able to do things that... Yeah. Because I even think, I think either Jessica or the Reverend Mother is comments on that, he's far advanced or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I did appreciate seeing him kind of suck and be, a young man trying to figure his way of dual lineages and stuff like that. So I thought that was cool just from a character development standpoint. But like you said, he's just not interesting once he actually develops anyways.
Now that you've said that, 100%, Paul's character development is way better in the movie than in the book. Yeah. And I do appreciate that decision. Mm-hmm. I just don't think Paul Atreides is
an interesting character. a great character.
Yeah. All right. Spoiler-free review. How did you feel about the visuals?
I actually think this movie's going to age really well.
You think so?
Yeah. There is a lot of practical effects in this. Or at least...
You just know that?
You
could tell.
You can tell. There's not digitized rain and characters are actually holding objects in their hands. And they're actually... when they're in the thropters and stuff, you can tell they're actually interacting with the controls. Yeah. The screen around them might not be real, but it's kind of like that interstellar effect where...
Or the gravity,
McConaughey and Hathaway are interacting with buttons. And they're moving gizmos and gadgets and stuff like that. So I think visually it's going to age very well.
What about some of the like? What do you think of the actual visualization of elements from the book?
That's
Like,
another thing is the thing that Denis got really, really right and was really, I think, really, really critical as far as adapting this novel is getting a sense of scale. Because I think with sci-fi movies, and every movie can have this problem to some degree, but sci-fi movies especially, it kind of, you lose that sense of weight in the universe. Like with Star Wars, every ship looks massive, or they're all the same size.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, how big really is that ship? You know, like you see the ship and it's the same size as the planet on the screen, and you're like, like how big it actually is.
Yeah.
Whereas in this movie, you know, they look up and they see a giant ass sand dune, and they're like, that's at least 30 feet tall or something like that.
Seriously,
you can tell that that's massive. So I appreciate, and you know, there's like wide shots of characters running along the desert, and I was like, oh, that's what a sci-fi movie should have. It should have, especially in space, it should have that sense of relativity to it.
Excellent word choice there. All right, spoiler for your review.
Did you?
At least for visuals, yeah.
Do you agree or do you disagree?
No, I agree for sure. I think
it's one of the strong points of it.
Oh yeah, well, for the visuals, it's always interesting when you're reading the book and you have your vision in the head, and you go see the movie, and it's like, oh, this is what someone else thinks it's gonna look like. But I know now that as I continue reading the book, those visuals are going to be what's in my head, you know? I don't know. No, they didn't bother me at all, I'd say. There were just, you know, like individual things where maybe I glanced over the description in the book. Like the Baron character, Stellan Skarsgård.
I think that was a creative liberty.
Yeah.
I think they just decided to make this guy vile.
Yeah. And the way that he like floats everywhere, that stuff. I was like, I was like, is that in the book?
I don't think so.
I don't remember. Yeah. So little things like that. Other than that, for the most part, my only issue with the visuals would be the fact that I think it was shot on film, and so it has an incredibly grainy look to it, especially at the very beginning of the movie. The actual like film itself is very dusty and grainy, which, yes, is probably on purpose because it's a movie about sand and dust.
Oh yeah,
100%. Are you gonna see what it says? What kind of cameras it was filmed with? Don't worry about it. I mean, even if it was filmed on digital, they probably just did it on purpose, you know. There we go. Anari Alexa.
Interesting. Yeah, film.
Yep.
Negative
film.
format.
So, there you go.
Just had to make sure.
All right. So, spoiler-free review.
It's in color, by the way, if you didn't know that. Wow. IMDb with the
facts.
The facts.
Spoiler-free. What'd you think of Denis Villeneuve? His directing.
He took a little bit of. I could see he was taking a little bit of Arrival and Blade Runner in this movie. Which I'll say right now, if you're not a fan of Blade Runner or Arrival, you might not like this movie. I say that as I know James isn't a fan of either. But I feel like he takes a lot of elements of both of those movies. You know, he has the cool like still shot poster shots that
for Blade Runner.
I guess for some reason he just decided that's what he wants to do now. I don't
just
hate
do
it.
wallpapers.
It looks cool. I don't hate it, but
his movies are now just wallpapers.
I mean, yeah, basically. But there's also that Arrival editing technique where it's cutting time as a flat circle, and it's just like we're here,
Terrence Malick
here, and we're actually here, and like, I'm doing a very bad job of explaining. Basically, if you've seen Arrival, you understand what I'm talking about. But time doesn't exist.
If you haven't seen Arrival, go watch Terrence Malick movies.
Yes, if time doesn't exist on a linear plane in Arrival, it's kind of like that. So it kind of flip flops in between each other throughout the whole movie, which this movie does do.
Yeah. With
There's
the
a lot
dream
of
stuff.
there's a lot of just cuts
Mm-hmm.
and going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was one scene when their mayhem's going on,
Mm-hmm.
and then it cuts and it's just silent, and one of the characters is kind of in a tub.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's interesting. And then it goes back. I don't know. Very Denis Villeneuve, which
Yeah.
I can appreciate just for the pure, I guess, aesthetic, the spectacle,
You love
as
your
you-
wallpapers.
as you said,
Yeah.
the pure spectacle of this movie. So.
All right. We'll talk about spoilers now. Spoiler alert. Snipe kills Dumbledore.
Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert.
Click off the video now.
Click
or don't.
off the video now.
We're going to spoil the book too. No, I'm joking.
All right, spoilers.
Spoiler review.
You want to say something
This
really
movie
bad.
sucked. No.
You want to say something really bad because you want to jump to spoilers. Go for it.
No. Okay, well, my biggest issue with this movie is Denis Villeneuve's directing.
Mm-hmm. And that's valid. That's a valid criticism of the movie.
And it's, for me, a wider criticism of Villeneuve's, no pun intended, but his direction that his directing is taking.
Yeah.
From about Sicario onwards, not including Sicario.
I think everything after Sicario.
Everything after Sicario,
Sure.
I have had gripes with it in terms of. It's hard to put into words because when I'm watching the movie, I know how I feel about it. It's I guess it's really just the feeling of. It's kind of uninspired.
He's going more for the spectacle now.
More for the spectacle,
Yeah.
more for the he edits a lot around exposition.
Yes.
There's a lot of
Yes.
just like shot, reverse shot, two people talking together in a room. There's not much paid to, composition in terms of where characters stand in relation to each other. Or in terms of even like the lighting in a scene.
He did do that one when they're in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
Paul and Jessica are in the rain and they're like 5 feet apart. I'm like, there's no way in hell they can hear each other.
Yeah.
Like, this is just pure Denis being like, I need to make this
is
look
gonna
cool.
look cool.
Yeah.
He has to get the high score on on that one perfect shot Twitter
Yeah.
account.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, there really wasn't anything else. And here's a problem I have with that. All of Villeneuve's prior work, Sicario, Prisoners, Enemy, Incendiaries, however you pronounce it in French, Polytechnics, however you pronounce it in French, those works, the reason why I was drawn to him as a director in the first place is because he was so visually bold and out there and even unique. And I don't know what the change was with Arrival, and especially with Blade Runner. I think maybe part of it is that these movies are very mainstream and he's appealing to a much wider audience. Because if you watch a movie like Enemy, that movie's not going to appeal to everyone visually. Like, not even just a story, but just like how that movie looks. It's not going to appeal to everybody. But I don't know. I just haven't been. For somebody who impressed me so much with movies like Sicario and Enemy and Polytechnic, to see Arrival, Blade Runner, and Dune, where it's just generic, here's the exposition, here's the cool explosion. That's just not interesting to me. I just don't like seeing it from Villeneuve.
I will defend him in that Arrival, Blade Runner, and Dune are all science fiction movies, and science fiction movies are always notorious about exposition dumps and being kind of bland as far as exposition dumps. Your criticism as far as he could do something more because he has the talent and the eye to do something more is very valid.
Which is why I was excited for him to direct Dune, because
Sure.
I know I'm like, if there's any, because Dune has so much internal monologue in the book, how do you pull it out visually? And I was like, Villeneuve is such a visual focused director. Look at Sicario, look at Enemy. He can do that. How is he going to do that with Dune? He just didn't.
He just used a lot of time as flat circle.
Yeah, he just stole from Terrence Malick. No, I'm joking.
I mean, is there any other way to show that though?
No.
Unless you go,
but that's
voiceover.
Well, okay. My issue is because a lot of that, what you're talking about is for the dreams and the visions.
Yeah.
There's a lot in terms of how characters understand certain information that is unexplained how they learned it. I will say this though, in terms of visuals, something they added in the film that's not in the book that I appreciate and was probably Villeneuve's way of visually representing the internal monologue was sign language.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool, but I don't know if it didn't strike me as fulfilling what I thought it was necessarily going to. It's an interesting way of representing the thoughts of the characters, or like the silent, understood facts between characters, but it doesn't fulfill the fact that so much of how the characters come to know that information doesn't happen on screen.
Yeah, but that's also the problem with the book.
Yeah.
Is they just internally, I guess Paul is the Spectre Gadget or something, where he just can rapid fire computer internalize and logicalize. I'm gonna make that a word. Everything that happens. Yeah, rationalize. That's another better word. He just rationalizes everything that's going on in his brain.
Yeah,
and it's kind of just. It's hard to show that.
Especially because in the book, that's his main struggle, is that he has to rationalize everything. And because you can read his thoughts, you know how much he's struggling with that. Whereas in the movie, it's like, okay, Timothy, just give us a really desperate look.
Yeah.
And just look like you're super desperate right now. You don't know what to do.
I just don't think there was any other way to do that.
There probably wasn't.
And I think...
other than voiceover, which would have been obnoxious.
I would have hated immediately.
Yeah. Which is why...
it's one of the hardest works to adapt.
Yeah.
That's why everybody considered it unadaptable.
That's why I would say my only gripe is the directing. Because everything else, I'm like, you basically pulled it off. This is probably the best Dune adaptation. So you thought of Lord of the Rings? This to me reminded me of Watchmen, Zack Snyder's Watchmen, where it's like, are you ever going to make a adaptation that is equal to or even succeeds the original? No, but it's the best attempt we're ever going to get.
Pretty damn close.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
Should have got Peter Jackson to do this.
Lord of the Rings had been adapted before
he did
that.
4 novels. Why can't he do 1 more?
For me though, that is, in terms of gripes with the movie, that's all I have to say is just Villeneuve's directing has been nothing but consistently disappointing for me.
Yeah, it's valid.
Just a little.
I personally don't agree.
I mean,
but I think
you don't have to.
Also, he's trying to market this movie because this is very famously one of his favorite novels of all time. Mm-hmm. This is what he claims he has been working for his whole career, is to get a shot at adapting Dune.
Yeah.
And so I think he kind of realized, I can't go full Sicario, Enemy, Prisoners, and be foreign film with a big undertaking like this. I need to be more
mainstream,
conventional.
Yeah.
In a way, which I don't think he's actually is very conventional as far as the modern science fiction blockbuster.
Which, fair enough. Yeah,
there is a little bit there is some,
Yeah.
actual talent as far as him directing.
In terms of like art house elements in his film, Arrival and Blade Runner.
Yeah.
I would say.
And those
are
movies
more
did
on
not
that
do
end.
well at all at the box office.
Yeah.
So,
Whereas Dune, we anticipate.
I mean, Arrival did pretty good at the Oscars, but because he wants to make a second one, you need to kind of make money off the first one to make the second one. Unfortunately, that's how life works. You have to make money to keep making more money.
So that's all I would have to say about it.
And we're out. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, how do you feel about the ending?
I'm surprised they ended it where they did. So for the book readers or those who are still with us, they end it right at page 500 and what? 3 or something like that.
503. So it's when Jessica and Paul find Stilgar in the desert, and this was a bit of a change from the book too, but Jamis, or however they pronounce his name,
I think it's
basically Paul beats up a guy, and the guy is like, "Nah, you beat me up. That's not fair. You know, you had an advantage, so I'm gonna fight you to the death." And he just kills the guy.
Yeah, I think in the book it was he didn't trust him or something like that. I don't remember them ever getting in that fight like that.
So in the book, I know this because I read this yesterday.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's been a while since I read this part.
I mean, it doesn't matter how it's different. We're judging the movie, not how they exactly changed it. My big issue with it, and I said this in the spoiler-free review, where I was like, you would probably be bored.
There's no fulfillment.
It's not. It's not like. How would you say? Like, it's not a contained story. No,
this is definitely setting up a sequel. Mm-hmm. And I remember I forgot what movie we talked about. I think it was the Bond movies where we were like, do you see a thread point continuing? It's like, no, this is definitely trying to continue the story.
Yeah, you can see like there's thread points, at least with Bond. It was like when we were talking about Skyfall, you're like, you can watch Skyfall as one film, right? Yeah. But this one, it was definitely like,
nah, you got to be around for second part.
Which is why I think you might be a little bored, because it's like you're just watching this movie just to wait another 2 years to get part 2.
To be fair, the Lord of the Rings movies are like that.
They are, but
there's no definitive movie ending until The Return of the King.
I feel differently. I still feel like each film could be a contained story to some degree.
Yeah, but the whole quest is taking the ring back to the Mount Doom, and they don't until the last movie.
Well, okay, here's what I'll say then. At the very least, even if it's not the main characters have complete story arcs within those individual films. In Dune, almost no character has a complete story arc.
I would argue, Paul.
In this,
if you're looking at just the movie, not taking what the book is and what his arc will be, as a whole.
Yeah.
He did have an arc. He went from this bratty kid who didn't really want to lead to being like, hey, I'm going to lead you guys and we're going to take back this planet. You can have a problem with the ending, but that is a character arc, coming from I don't want to lead to I'm going to lead.
I think just the fact that it ends so abruptly at that point is why it doesn't feel like a very satisfying arc. Like, I can see that because that's there.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. We both have problems with the ending. Where would you have ended it? If you end it, because if you end it any later, you're not leaving a lot for part 2.
Yeah.
Because a lot is going to go down in part 2.
Mm-hmm. And that's what.
And if you end it sooner, then I feel like it's even more abrupt.
Yeah. Which is why, on the one hand, it makes sense why they end it there. But on the other hand, it's like, because I guess, it's like the first 500 pages contains the same amount of action as the last 300 pages.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what are you going to do?
That was probably my biggest problem with the book was it took 300 pages just to get going. And I was like, can we just get going, please? It's like, I enjoy reading this, but come on, guys.
That was one of the issues I had with the movie, was it felt like it was pretty slow.
Yeah, that's fair. I would agree with that. At least the first probably 20 to 30 minutes.
What was funny too is that there was a moment in the film where I was like, so are they even gonna get to like any like war or fighting in this
It's like
film?
we saw this in the trailer.
This is
when
only
we-
supposed to be like 2.5
We're an
hours.
hour in and they're just getting to
Yeah.
Arrakis.
Yeah. And it's like when I had my coughing fit and I checked the time and it was 8:50, I was like, wait, this movie ends soon, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. That's
I think it was
tough
just the
call, man.
nature of the beast.
Mhm.
Just we got to end it abruptly. I mean, it's like
Well, first,
you know what this reminded me of?
because I haven't.
the
yeah.
ending
What?
Harry Potter when they split the last book into two.
Mm.
That ending for the first book was
Yeah.
just out of nowhere. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, by the way, Dobby dies.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, Dobby dies. It was like, hey, Dobby dies. All right, see you guys in 2 years.
Yeah.
It's like, what? It's exactly how this book ended.
Peace. Yeah.
It's exactly how this movie ended.
Yeah. Understandable. I can see.
I think
that.
it's just the nature of the beast.
I would say so too.
You know, you can have problems with, but you also have to acknowledge, like, this is a pretty hard book to adapt. And the fact that I think, I mean, would you agree with me that he did it? He
Yeah.
did
Like
it
I said,
well.
that's why I was like this.
Yeah.
That's why it reminds me of Watchmen, because it's like this is the closest we will ever get to an actual decent adaptation of this book. As much as it's like the Hodorowski one, I think most fans, like the hardcore Dune fans, are like, we want to see that.
Yeah.
That was like, you know, if you wanted to watch a 6-hour movie that was faithful 100% of the way, including the internal monologue, then you would have gotten that. With the David Lynch one, don't even bother with it. I will say this though,
David Lynch one looks garbage.
in terms
I
of
can't
the
believe people
visuals,
defend it.
the fact that the shields that
Oh
they
god, the David Lynch shields look. I can't believe
have,
people. The soul. When I read comments, that people were like, "I'll just watch the original." Why? Do you not like good movies? It looks so bad.
What's funny too is that in the book, I kept imagining those as the shields because that's just my only frame of reference. So in the movie, when he puts it on, it has like the 3D effect, and I'm like, nice.
That makes more sense.
That makes more sense.
That's science.
Don't know
fiction.
why I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You see that? That's some science fiction right there.
Let me ask you about the acting. Like, we can go into a little bit of spoilers. I don't like Timothy. Do you like Timothy?
No, I agree with you.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember.
Okay, let me ask you about either acting or characterization. How'd you feel about Jessica? Either the
she's
actress
one of the
or-
she's one of the characters that I think really was enhanced by the movie.
was enhanced.
I think so.
I think the opposite.
Really?
I think it was worse.
How so?
I prefer the book, Jessica.
How so?
Because in the book, partially yes, because we can read her thoughts, but like she's just such a badass in the book. Like she has her flaws, right? She basically gave birth to her son to manipulate him in order to fulfill this
Yeah.
role. But she's such a she's much more calm and kind of stoic. Like she loses her cool all the time.
But it's
she-
internally.
Yeah, it's always internally, and the only ever times where she I guess loses her cool is when she's just beating people up. Whereas in the movie, she's crying in every single scene.
But she's
does.
not crying around other people. Which I think is if you're gonna do it in
I
movie,
see what you're saying. Yeah,
that's probably the way you're gonna do it, because you have to show that side of her, that she's freaking out. I see what you're saying, and that
Yeah.
was actually gonna be a point that I was gonna bring up, was
the change.
the fact that she freaks out all the time.
Yeah,
I think you have to show her freaking out, and then because I remember there's a scene where she goes to Oscar Isaac, where she wipes away her tears and then goes in, and she's like, doesn't even look like she was crying. It's like, oh,
yeah.
that's how you do that. I think
Yeah, I
to
see what
your
you're
point,
saying.
it probably does work better reading it versus seeing it.
Yeah.
But again,
'Cause-
nature of the beast.
That's why some of the issues with watching this movie, assuming you haven't read the book, is it's like, well, how is she going to be able to go from crying to at the end of the film where she's now able to fight this seemingly very strong guy, who's supposed to be really difficult to fight, and she takes him down in 2 hits, and it's like, how do you go back and there's the juxtaposition of those two characterizations in the movie feels like too much of a leap. Whereas in the book, it makes sense.
They do show her at some scenes being very capable, though. Like when they hijack the kidnappers, dropped her, and she's like,
using the
she's
voice.
like, do this, and she tells
Yeah.
Paul what to do, and she takes action.
Even that, I would say, if you haven't read the book, probably would seem like it's coming out of nowhere. Is her capabilities, her power?
Yeah, because I guess that's the first time she does use it.
Mm-hmm.
We know she has the capability.
Whereas in the book, her whole characterization at least the beginning of the book is just like, I'm super powerful because I'm your mom and I taught you everything. Yeah. Therefore, you have to do what I say. And then when she does that stuff, you're like, this is the powerful character being powerful.
Yeah.
Whereas in the movie, it's like she just cries all the time, and now here she is using apparently the voice.
I liked it. I think Jessica Hall was very good, or Rebecca Hall, excuse me. Jessica is the character.
Yeah. Your point about
because there's some scenes
having to show that,
where continue your thought. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say that while I was annoyed by it, I think you bring up a good point that showing that more emotive side of the character, is healthy. At least it made the character more well developed than they are in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just my personal preference that I like that one-dimensional, super unemotive character, but you never know. All right. Now about the actor.
Well, I was gonna say there's some scenes where she gives daggers, like she's staring daggers at characters, and she's
like, true.
To me, the hallmark of a good actor is can you act with your eyes? Because the eyes they never lie.
And you don't like Timothée Chalamet? That's all he does, man.
No. If you have to, no. He has the same eyes throughout the whole movie, except when he's getting tortured.
He has Ryan Gosling syndrome.
Yeah. I don't know, because there were scenes where she's like worried, and you can tell she's worried just by not even her saying a thing. Mm-hmm. She's wearing a mask for like basically the last 25 minutes, and yet you can tell every single emotion that she's feeling.
Yeah.
Every time she's on screen.
Yeah.
Just through her eyes, and I was like, oh, that's. Having read the novel, I understand what's going through her brain. Yeah. But I think even if you watch the movie and if you pay attention,
eyes would make sense.
It would make sense.
Yeah.
Because and I thought this was really cool. There's a scene, the very, very end. Paul looks at her and she's smiling, and then Paul turns around and she immediately looks at Zendaya and is like, "I will kill you in your sleep." And I'm like, "Oh, that's Jessica," because that's a big. Yeah. That's gonna be a thing. So I thought that was very cool. Yeah. When I caught that, I couldn't help but smile.
How do you feel about segue? How do you feel about Zendaya?
She says a total of 3 lines. Yeah. And she just looks very pretty. She's very beautiful, but it's an okay cat. Yeah, Chani in the book is supposed to be like this irresistible woman to Paul.
You don't feel that way about Zendaya?
No. I'm saying that's why she was casted. I think that's why I think it's a good. It's a good. Zendaya's irresistible to most people. So yeah, I don't. I'm not gonna. She said a total of 3 lines, so I can't be like, oh, she was bad. Yeah, just like she was just there to look pretty for most of the part. Josh Brolin did Josh Brolin things.
Jason Momoa, I thought, was actually pretty good.
Jason Momoa was actually pretty decent. That's another character that I think was enhanced.
Yeah,
especially because he had such a short time in the novel.
Book. Yeah,
that it was kind of cool to see like an extra layer.
Part of why I think that works so much is just Jason Momoa, just the way that he looks and his
his personal
charisma. Yeah,
he just you can go watch any of his interviews and he
exudes
is
charisma.
A cool guy.
Yeah, and everyone
just
that on its own, just his aura.
Yeah,
enhanced.
He could have said no word. He could have been a mute, and we would have.
It still would have been pretty cool.
We probably would have figured out. Oscar Isaac as the Duke. The Duke's not in the book a lot, so that was pretty hard.
I feel like, well, as far as you remember, Duke is in the book a lot. Like the first 200 pages is almost exclusively from the Duke's perspective. So I didn't watch much of I actually didn't see any of the trailers. I avoided all of them. So a lot of these casting decisions, I'm basically seeing them for the first time, except for, of course, Zendaya and Timothy. So Oscar Isaac as the Duke was a surprise to me. I didn't know that beforehand.
Did you know he was the Duke as soon as he showed up on screen?
Yeah, because he has beard.
Yeah.
Beard of power. Yeah, I think they cut. I actually think the opposite, where I feel like they cut his character down for the movie a lot. In the book, it's hard to say. Like, on the one hand, in the book, he doesn't do much, but a lot of what he says is very impactful.
Yes.
Whereas in the movie, because they cut him down, he doesn't do much and he doesn't say much. And so he doesn't have as strong as an impact, especially after he dies. Because in the book, after he dies, and Paul realizes that, and there's maybe like a good 15 pages in the book of just like solely dedicated
Yes.
to Paul coming to terms with the death of his father.
That's the end of part 1.
Yeah.
That's when he makes that flip between
Mhm.
I'm a boy to now I have to be a leader.
And now he's the Duke.
Because I think even Jessica comments on that.
Mhm. And that is, in the book, it's very powerful, whereas in the movie, you don't have a way to show that.
Mhm.
And it's not there. So I feel Oscar Isaac did a good job playing the character. Character didn't have a big role in the movie.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Maybe we'll see more of him in part 2 with the time as a flat circle
Yeah.
mode of
Prescient
editing.
vision.
I forgot I was trying to look
All right.
up here.
Andy Serkis as the worm.
That's another thing that I think was cool. Was
The worm design?
As far as like
Yeah.
when I was talking about like the weight
Mhm.
and the size of the world, and you needed to nail that to show
Those
that
worms,
the worms were massive is
For sure.
pretty smart.
For sure.
Anything else?
No, I think that covered just about everything.
Soundtrack? You want to talk about the soundtrack?
Oh my god, could you even hear a word of dialogue in this movie?
I actually could, surprisingly.
The music was so loud.
I actually, yeah, I was surprised how well mixed it was. But I guess because I'm so used to watching Nolan movies that
Yeah, no, that's enough for me, dog. This music in this movie was louder than standing next to the track at a Formula One event.
Well, I mean, we were in a theater versus being outdoors.
Yeah,
little
true.
different.
True. But it's like, it was so insanely loud at some points for me. To the point, what I didn't like either was that there would be dialogue over the music, because the music would just be, your classic Hans Zimmer, blah, kind of stuff. I could barely hear some of the dialogue.
It's not my favorite track of his, but I did appreciate a lot of Middle Eastern influence.
Yes, I appreciated that. There were just moments in the movie where, here's what I hate. When a soundtrack, how do I want to say this? Like, when the soundtrack enhances a scene is different from, like, pointing out the scene itself. For example, there was a moment towards the end of the movie after he kills Jamis, and then there's like the choir vocals come out through, and it's like as if they're saying, "Pay attention to this. This is gonna be important." And I don't appreciate that at all. So there were some soundtrack decisions, because that wasn't the first time they did it either.
Yeah.
Some of those decisions, I'm like, yeah, I have eyes. I can just watch the movie and tell it's important. But for the most part, I mean,
That's the point of soundtracks, though, is to enhance the key elements.
but it wasn't enhancing it. It was just being like, are you paying attention? This scene is important. It's like, you're not enhancing it, you're just taking away from it, in my opinion. It was obvious. It was obvious. It was blatant.
I suppose.
I don't know. That was just a weird thing that bothered me. Other than that, the soundtrack was just Hans Zimmer doing stuff, I got nothing to complain there.
It was Hans Zimmer being Hans Zimmer.
Pretty much, yeah.
Really. Pretty good stuff. You excited for part 2? You're gonna go watch part 2?
I actually want to I want to finish the saga.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Like all
like
the
the 4
sequels?
books.
Oh, jeez.
The
Nah,
4
I think I'm
books.
good with just the first.
Now I'm curious. I want to read the 4 books and see how it ends.
Well, you know the second movie stops at the end of this book, right?
Well, I want to see how the books end.
Oh,
anyway.
okay.
Yeah.
I was like, you're just doing extra credit.
Yeah, just doing extra credit, just in case he throws in
You
some.
just need to finish the book,
Throws us
the
for a
first
loop.
book.
The last 10 minutes of part 2 is going to be 3 books in one.
They did allude to one of the sequels.
Yeah.
So, in the movie, one of the sequel novels, one of the sequel
Okay.
books.
You know what I don't like about? Wait, at the ending, do they give him the name Muad'Dib? Do they name him? They don't.
called him no, which they should have.
They should have.
Well, yeah,
That's
I
a
guess so.
big thing in the book.
They changed the name.
What did they change it
It's
to?
Maladi.
No. That was a name that they call him, but he chooses his name, and he chooses Muad'Dib.
Okay.
If they had ended the movie with that, his character arc probably would have felt a lot more fulfilled.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Especially because you see the mouse. They show you the mouse jumping around a few times. That 100%, in my opinion, would have been a better ending. And what's funny is that it's like 2 extra lines. What shall we call you? Call me Muad'Dib. Roll credits.
Muad'Dib, Atreides.
Yeah. Paul Muad'Dib. So
Fears
that to me just would have been
a better name.
I don't know why they didn't do that, especially because in the book it's like from page 1, you know that that's what he's called.
You know he's called that from the back cover.
Yeah. yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And then they just don't do that. And I don't know why they didn't do that. That's a little disappointing, actually, now that I think about it. Denny, you must answer for your crimes.
You have committed crimes against
Arrakis
and her people. What say you in your defense? Yeah, I got nothing left. Should people go read the book?
Yeah.
Would you recommend the book for people
I would
to read?
recommend the book if you want to read a 700-page book.
Definitely break it up.
Or don't.
Because, hey man, don't feel bad about yourself. It took me 2 years to finish that book, so I finished it just for this film. Currently on track to make, well, as of right now, 129 million.
Broke 100? Is that that's including international.
It's been out for a month already,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. I will put. I guess it depends on when I edit.
I'd
this.
say it still makes 100 million domestic.
Interesting. I don't know because Halloween Kills came out last week, and I feel like more people are gonna be more willing to go watch a
No.
Halloween movie. Yeah, it's Halloween season.
I don't think so, though. Well, okay. Yes, you're right. But
This movie is also on HBO
this
Max.
is also Dune. Yeah. And I feel like this movie.
Well, I mean, Denis Villeneuve's not a big hit right now.
He's not,
His
but I still
last-
feel like the marketing for
his
this
last
movie
two
has been pretty
movies-
big.
See, here's the problem I have with marketing, and we'll get into like a 2-minute film, a
Okay.
2-minute spiel. They're marketing both Timothée and Zendaya,
But not the movie.
Their market demographic would be 15-year-old females and slash or like 15-year-old males.
I remember you said this before the movie too.
So
You're like, is the audience going to be filled with teenagers?
are teenagers gonna go watch Dune, a science fiction 2.5-hour movie,
Yeah.
156-minute movie?
Maybe not.
You know what I'm saying?
I still think it
I
makes a 100
personally
million.
didn't go watch this movie because of Timothée or Zendaya.
I watched it because of Zendaya.
I mean, I personally watched it for
Oscar Isaac.
Javier Bardem.
Yeah. He was pretty good too.
The 3 lines he had.
He was so good that I didn't even recognize him until
I wanted to whisper to you to be like, do you know who that is?
Yeah, he like just blended in so well.
He's probably the one character that didn't look like his actor. Well, I mean, that's not really saying a lot, but
He looks like his character.
they did a good job with him.
For sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
I say 100 million.
I would not be surprised if this does good. I would not be surprised if this does bad. I don't think it's gonna do.
I would
any
be surprised
records.
if it does better than Venom or Black Widow did on its opening day.
You would be surprised.
I would be surprised.
So it's not gonna make 100 million.
Well, Venom was like 180 something, right?
Not opening day.
You sure it was?
Maybe for overall, not domestically. You want me to pull it up real quick?
Yeah, because if it was okay, Dune's opening day in my opinion, it won't surpass Venom.
850. Holy crap! 856 million so far.
No, that's Venom. You need Venom.
Oh,
Carnage.
Carnage.
Yeah,
That's right. Forget there's two.
you're looking at pre-pandemic numbers right there.
All right, so we were at. Is Venom a hit or a flop? 90 mil. So it got
90
close.
million. Got close.
I think it's number one. Yeah, I think it would be number one then.
Yeah.
So if you don't think it's gonna break, so you don't think it's gonna hit 100. I'll be honest right now. I don't think it's gonna break. I think it's gonna hit 40, 50, because it's on HBO Max too.
True.
And if people are actually interested, my
Better
thought process
get that.
is if people are actually interested, they'd probably go watch it on HBO Max.
True. Yeah. Maybe.
But we'll see.
I think it'll
It'll be an interesting litmus to see if Denis still has
power.
power.
If he not if he still has, but if he does have power. Because one box office flop with Blade Runner is like, you're still a good director, we'll give you something else. But two with both quote unquote big franchises like Blade Runner and Dune, it's like
The only way I could see him being redeemed by that is if it does really well with critics and is Oscar nominated, which I don't think it is going to be. But
no.
if it is, and he's getting best director noms, I could see a studio being like, "Hey, we'll give you." But I mean, that's the whole problem with Martin Scorsese had that for decades was people didn't want to finance his films because he just wasn't a hit or he just didn't deliver at the Oscars.
Yep.
So, anyways, let's get out of here. It's getting late.
I keep yawning.
Yeah, I know. This was our review of Dune. Go read the book. Go watch the movie if you like the book. If you don't like the movie,
read the other books.
shut your face. I was talking to the audience if they didn't like the movie. And if you haven't read the book, maybe go watch the movie. I think there's enjoyment to be had with it. Maybe.
I would say just read the book first.
But definitely.
Reading is important.
See you guys later.